Order. We start with questions to the Minister for Women and Equalities. Bobby Dean.
Question number 1, please.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We understand that energy bills are a concern for many people. We believe the only way to protect bill payers permanently, including disabled people, is to accelerate the green transition towards homegrown clean energy. We are continuing to work closely with energy suppliers to ensure that vulnerable customers are supported.
Bobby Dean.
I thank the Minister for her answer. In my constituency of Carshalton and Wallington, Scope Research estimates that disabled households face bills of up to £1,500 a month more than the average household. We also know that disabled households are much less likely to claim the benefits that they're entitled to. So I'd like to know if the Equalities Office has made any assessment on the potential disproportionate impact on disabled households of the cut to the winter fuel allowance.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. An equality analysis was released in September and the Government carried out its statutory duties in doing so. But I do recognise the wider concerns that he raises, especially around the additional costs faced by many disabled people. That's why the Minister for Energy Consumers recently met with suppliers to address some of these issues. And I would encourage all of those who need extra support to sign up to the Priority Services Register.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Disabled people are also concerned about the use of AI in government departments under previous government, including within the DWP. So with the UN's report on AI governance recently, what discussions has the Minister had with other colleagues across the different departments on the principles, the equity principles that will be integrated in the government's use of AI?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. Discussions are ongoing across government, including with my right honourable friend who represents DSIT. There are wider opportunities and challenges that technology presents us, and we want to make sure that we get the balance right.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Further to the question that my honourable friend asked, DWP statistics say that 45% of people over the state pension age have a disability. And as we've already heard, they can face hugely inflated energy costs because of the need for equipment such as stair lifts, extra fridges, oxygen tanks, all of which demand electricity. So in the discussions which the Minister has outlined, have they given any consideration to the introduction of a social tariff to help mitigate the extra costs that disabled people face in this country?
The Honourable Lady will recognise the very difficult state of the public finances that we inherited and the tough choices that were necessary in order to stabilise our economy. And these were decisions that were not easy. What I would say to her is that my honourable friend, the Member for Energy Consumers, is leading on much of this work to ensure that we secure a fairer deal for all consumers, because we do want to ensure that all support is targeted at the most vulnerable groups who need support this winter.
Joe White.
Question 2, Mr Speaker.
Anneliese.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With your permission, I will answer questions 2, 8, 11 and 12 together. My colleagues and I are working closely together to tackle the national emergency of violence against women and girls and to deliver our mission to halve violence against women and girls in a decade. We've begun our work to make streets, homes and workplaces safer for women by announcing that domestic abuse specialists will be placed in emergency control rooms and that adult victims of rape in England and Wales will get access to free legal advocates.
Joe White.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I, like many mothers, had to bring up my daughters to be cautious of men, their motives, language and behaviour. Sadly, many of our daughters still have to learn the hard way, with one of mine taking years to recover from the assault she experienced as a school child. Misogynistic attitudes and behaviours are often learned, tolerated and reinforced whilst in school. In recent times, social media influencers are driving this, embedding women hatred into our culture. Can I ask the Minister how they are tackling this rising challenge in schools, and will this be embedded into the curriculum across all ages?
Secretary.
I completely agree with my honourable friend that misogyny must be tackled, and I know the whole House will want to say we were deeply concerned to hear about her daughter's experience. Clearly, statutory RSHE is essential to tackling misogyny. There must be clear guidance on teaching it, which is why we're carefully considering consultation responses and evidence to ensure new guidance meets the needs of students and teachers. And the Independent Curriculum and Assessment Review will carefully consider how RSHE fits in with the wider curriculum as part of their work. We must tackle misogyny from the start. That means in schools, also online and across society.
Caroline Bolden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the recent high-profile allegations of appalling abuse which many women suffered in their workplace, which have...
Order. Please, the members asking a question shouldn't walk in front of members. Carry on, please.
Given the recent high-profile allegations of appalling abuse of women in their workplace, which have been all over the news, what steps is the government planning to protect women who come forward with allegations of such abuse in the future, particularly in the workplace?
Secretary.
Very grateful to the honourable member for raising that incredibly important question, and I think many of us have been deeply concerned by some of the stories that have come to public light. We are determined as a new government to strengthen the legal duty around sexual harassment so that employers take all reasonable steps to stop sexual harassment before it starts. We'll also require, Mr. Speaker, employers to create and maintain workplaces and working conditions free from harassment, including by third parties.
Mike Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My predecessor, Greg Clark, brought a bill before the House to make it illegal to harass women in public. The Protection from Sex-Based Harassment in Public Bill received royal assent in September of last year. However, the Act is not in force because the Secretary of State needs to pass a statutory instrument to make regulations to allow that to happen. So it's legal plumbing, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister undertake to write to me and update me when that work will be done and when this important Act will come into force?
Secretary.
I would be very happy to write to the honourable member when it does indeed come into force. And to be absolutely clear, this new government is determined to have violence against women and girls within a decade. That includes on the street as well as in workplaces and homes. And I know the Home Secretary takes that incredibly seriously too. So she is working with us on this. Thank you.
Dr. Rupert Hoke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Women welcome this government finally implementing buffer zones around abortion clinics, as repeatedly voted for by MPs in this House. So can the Minister tell me when, and will it apply to those silently intimidating, knowingly or not, at the clinic gates, as the Tories were trying to scrap that bit on the slide?
Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend for her important question, and I also pay tribute to her and my honourable friends, the Home Secretary and the Minister for Crime and Policing, along with others across the House who have campaigned on this issue for years. The new government has been able to finally take urgent steps to address this issue. Protection zones around abortion clinics will be in force from the 31st of October, the end of this month. This government is determined that anyone exercising their legal right to access abortion services should be free from harassment and intimidation, and the police will now have the power to deal with anyone they reasonably suspect to be obstructing, causing harassment or distress, or influencing within a buffer zone.
Shadow Minister Mims Davis.
Firstly, may I welcome the ministerial team to their places. The Conservative government launched the £100 million VORG strategy, determined our streets are made safer for women and girls, creating a new 24/7 sexual assault helpline, transport safety champions, a £5 million safety of women at night fund. Why does this Labour government feel setting a target of merely halving violence against women and girls is a suitable ambition? Nothing, Mr. Speaker, but targeting the total eradication of this horrific criminality, whether in the home or on the streets, is surely enough.
Minister.
Well, the reality is, Mr Speaker, that we saw reported rates of different forms of violence against women and girls rising repeatedly under the previous government and charge rates falling shamefully low. This government will not stand by in the face of that national emergency. We will act. That is why we have set a cross-government mission. No more talk, but action, Mr Speaker, and we are determined to deliver it for the sake of women and girls.
Jill German.
Question number 3, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And with your permission, I will answer questions 3 and 13 together. This government is committed to breaking the link between young people's backgrounds and their future success, and I am proud to lead our opportunity mission across government, through which we will ensure that every child thrives in education and achieves their ambitions in work and later life, no matter what their background.
Jill German.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Wales, breaking down barriers to opportunity has long been an area of work. But with so many levers of change at the hands of a UK Tory government, success over the last 14 years has been greatly hampered. Can my right honourable friend assure me that Cabinet colleagues in this government will work closely with Welsh Government partners so that future earnings in Clwyd North reflect the huge potential I see in our children and young people every day?
Yes, Mr Speaker, I can give my honourable friend that assurance. We will work very closely with devolved governments to make sure that we are all pulling together to break down those barriers that too many of our young people face at the moment. And that's why the work that I'm leading with the DWP Secretary on child poverty is so crucial, because we know child poverty is an issue that blights too many lives right across the UK.
Dr Becky Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Coastal areas, such as my own constituency of Worthing West, experience lower life expectancy and higher levels of preventable ill health compared with many non-coastal areas. This is directly related to the fact that they often have higher levels of socio-economic deprivation. Could I ask my right honourable friend what steps is she taking to address these specific inequalities in coastal communities?
My honourable friend is a real champion for her constituents and for coastal communities, and I do recognise the sometimes distinct challenges that can exist in different communities. Work is already underway to make sure that where you're from doesn't determine what you can succeed, but I'd be very happy to discuss that further with my honourable friend.
Lucy Smart.
Thank you very much. Young carers, young people in my community with care experience are campaigning for care and care experience to be classified as a protected characteristic. Will the Minister meet with them and with me to discuss whether this government plans to bring this forward?
We're looking very carefully at what more we need to do to make sure that all care experienced young people receive the support that they need. We know that outcomes are incredibly poor on many occasions, and we do recognise the disadvantage that care experienced young people face. We're looking at what more we can do, both in terms of legislation and beyond that, to ensure that all young people get the support that they deserve. And I'll make sure that my colleague from the Department for Education, the Minister for Children and Families, is in touch with the Honourable Lady.
Jim Shannon.
Mr Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for her answer to that question, a very important question. What discussions has the Minister had with the DFC back home in Northern Ireland to ensure that individuals from all socio-economic backgrounds have equal opportunities in terms of pay regardless of where they free up? Thank you very much.
I'm afraid I'd just say to the Honourable Gentleman, I didn't catch all of that question, but what I would say is I'm happy to discuss it with him further, but I've met with my counterparts in Northern Ireland. I do recognise the shared challenges that we face and want to make sure we're working constructively across the devolved governments on areas of concern.
Connor
Number 4, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, we want a more inclusive society with less discrimination, and our election manifesto committed us to putting the views and voices of disabled people at the heart of all we do. As a first step, we're legislating to deliver equal pay for disabled people with disability pay gap monitoring for larger employers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A huge part of tackling discrimination against disabled people is challenging preconceptions about what people can achieve. And will the Minister therefore join me in congratulating the phenomenal Joseph Adams, a 21-year-old with Down syndrome in my constituency, who recently ran 10 10Ks in 10 different countries in just 5 days as part of his No Limits challenge, who's raised a staggering £400,000 for a disability sports and employment programme in my community.
I'm delighted to congratulate Joseph and welcome my honourable friend drawing his achievements to our attention. I would just say I spent an inspiring few days at the Paralympics in Paris not long ago, partly inspiring because we came second. Behind only China, ahead of the USA, ahead of all the other European countries as well. And my honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight the importance of this. We are going to work with disabled people and their organisations to make sport more accessible and remove the barriers which too often are in place at the moment.
Richard Holden.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The CAS review is a robust report backed by clinicians and firmly grounded in evidence. The Government and NHS England will be implementing Dr Cass's recommendations in full so that children and young people get the safe, holistic care and support they need.
Richard Holden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for that answer. Dr Cass's review was an important moment for services for young people, particularly in this country. Will the Minister restate the Government's commitment to ensuring that all of the findings of the review are implemented, a review based on evidence ahead of ideology, and would the Minister also reject calls from various vested interest groups to pause implementation at the moment and press ahead as quickly as possible in order to protect vulnerable young people in our country?
Mr. Speaker, as I said in my original answer, the Government is absolutely committed to implementing all of Dr Cass's review, evidence-based review, absolutely in full.
Tony on the outset.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Minister for the response and for the robust response that this Labour Government has taken to support the CAS review. But can she confirm with me that she is having robust conversations with devolved governments around the implementation of this across the United Kingdom?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question. The Secretary of State has met with and discussed with leaders of all the devolved administrations our intention to work with them very closely across all issues that come under our sphere, and that would include the recommendations of CAS.
Shadow Minister John Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And may I thank the Minister for taking up the recommendations in the CAS review. And children struggling with their gender identity deserve our protection and a holistic, understanding approach via our new NHS centres rather than irreversible medical and surgical intervention. So can the Minister confirm to this House that the BMA's original position that the CAS review contained unsubstantiated recommendations will not delay that protection being put in place for vulnerable children? Thank you.
Minister.
I can't reiterate any more strongly than I have that this Government is absolutely committed to implementing the CAS review evidence-based recommendations in full.
Becky Gittins.
6, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As part of our mission to make work pay, we will provide protections from maternity discrimination and sexual harassment, will speed up progress on the gender pay gap and will strengthen equal pay protections. The step we will take will enable women everywhere to thrive and transform their working lives for the better.
Becky Gittins.
I'd like to thank the Minister for that response and ask whether she agrees with me that, unlike some of the comments we've heard from the opposition leadership contenders this week that are incredibly worrying, does she agree with me that in order to grow our economy, we need to create the conditions to encourage and support more women back into the workplace?
I strongly agree with my honourable friend that supporting women to return and progress at work is a crucial part of securing economic growth. Very surprising it was even in doubt, indeed. And this Labour government is on the side of new mothers, which is why our plan to make work pay commits to strengthening their workplace protections, improving access to flexible working and creating the conditions for all parents to balance work and care.
Carl Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 4 women have been brutally killed in the last 6 weeks in Northern Ireland, bringing the total to 24 since 2020. Many of these young women were professional women working and contributing to society. Would the Minister agree that we need to do more than just pay lip service to supporting women, whether it be in the home or in the workplace, to actually punish these perpetrators?
Minister.
I absolutely agree with the honourable member, and it's extremely concerning whenever we hear of exactly what has happened to women, whether it's in the home, in the workplace or on the street. Women deserve to be safe, so do girls. That's why this government is acting at pace, making sure that, for example, in emergency rooms we have specialists on domestic abuse, making sure we have specialist rape crisis centres, and making sure we work across the whole of the United Kingdom on these shared concerns for the sake of women and girls.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today marks the start of Baby Loss Awareness Week. It's a difficult and important time for many of our constituents and for those of us who have experienced baby loss or miscarriage. Many private sector employers, and now the NHS, the largest public sector employer of women, have led the way in offering paid bereavement leave for those who miscarry. Does the Minister agree that all workers could and should benefit from the right to bereavement leave following baby loss?
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for raising this question. I'd like to congratulate her, of course, on her election as chair of the Women and Equalities Select Committee. And of course she has campaigned for many, many months and indeed years on this issue of baby loss, as have other members across the House. I'm very pleased to see that progress amongst some major employers, and I know she will want to work with us on ensuring that those who experience baby loss are supported and protected, particularly at the most difficult times. Thank you.
Dear Meg Hillier, on topicals.
Number one, Mr. Speaker.
So stay.
Mr. Speaker, this Black History Month, I would like to reiterate that people's race or ethnicity should never be a barrier to opportunity. We are enhancing rights through upcoming legislation on race and disability equality, employment rights and banning conversion practices. To deliver this important work, we are reforming the Equality Hub to create the Office for Equality and Opportunity in the Cabinet Office. There is much to do working within and beyond government to create opportunity and promote equality across the UK.
Dame Meg Hillier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've had some progress since this government was elected on issues relating to black and minority ethnic women and domestic violence. However, Valerie Ford was my constituent, was brutally murdered by her partner, and Valerie's Law, named for her and campaigned for by her daughter and the charity Sister Space in my constituency, has not yet hit the statute books. And I wonder if the Secretary of State could reconsider, examine the support needed for women because of their ethnic and racial background. Thank you.
Thursday.
I pay tribute to my right honourable friend and her campaigning work. I pay tribute to my right honourable friend for all of the campaigning work that she has done in this crucial area in the face of the tragic loss of Valerie Ford. We must do everything that we can to make sure that all victims of violence against women and girls receive the support that they need, and I'll make arrangements for her to discuss this further with the Home Office Minister around what more we need to do around police training and standards in particular.
Ms Davis.
The Conservative government introduced the hugely successful opt-out HIV and hepatitis testing programme for A&Es in London, Brighton, Blackpool and Manchester, with a £20 million commitment to expand the programme to 33 more, diagnosing more than 1,300 people with HIV in the first 2 years, tackling health inequalities, meaning crucially, Mr. Speaker, more LGBT plus people, women, people of black African ethnicity, older people as well, were diagnosed and supported. Can the Secretary of State assure the House of funding and commitment remains?
What I would say to the right honourable lady is that I thank her for raising such an important issue where I think we all want to make progress across this House. Officials are working on further plans. We will be setting them out very shortly, but we will be keen to work with her and colleagues across the House to make sure that we eradicate new HIV and AIDS infections.
Steve Blaze.
Mr. Speaker, many of my constituents in Exeter benefit from maternity pay, which supports women while they spend precious time with their newborn children. Is the Minister of the view that maternity pay, in the words of a Tory leadership candidate opposite, has gone too far?
Absolutely not. And my honourable friend is right to mention the fact that that kind of assessment not only flies in the face of common sense, but also flies in the face of all the economic evidence. Because when we support women to return to work and to progress at work while being able to spend time with their families, we grow our economy, something this government is determined to do.
Wendy Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker, across Aldridge Brownhills we have some fabulous girls' football teams and the excellent Walsall Wood Ladies Football Club at Oak Park Active Living Centre, no doubt inspired by the Lionesses. The last government committed funding to support women and girls football. Can the Minister confirm that this funding will continue?
I can assure the Right Honourable Lady that we are absolutely determined to encourage young women and girls to take part in sport and physical activity, something that falls off all too often as girls reach their teenage years. And in my work in the Department for Education, through the Curriculum and Assessment Review, we're looking at what more schools can do and going beyond that, working with sporting bodies to deliver more.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Accessible transport was a major challenge for my constituents, especially accessing rail stations on the Tyne Valley Railway line. Will the Secretary of State work with the Department for Transport to ensure that Great British Railways put disabled access at the heart of their plans?
Mr. Speaker, yes, we will. Accessibility is at the heart of the government's passenger-focused approach, and with a unified rail network, we'll be able to meet accessibility needs more reliably and consistently and plan how best to improve accessibility across the entire network.
Kirsty Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've had a number... Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've had a number of commitments to the implementation of the CAST review from the government. I'm wondering if the government would commit to ensuring that trans people do get access to the health care that they need and to ensuring that those waiting lists are brought down as soon as possible.
Minister.
I'm grateful to the honourable member for raising this question, and she is absolutely right to point to the very long waiting list that many people currently experience, and I know that the Health Secretary is focused on this issue as well as more broadly on LGBT health, indeed health for everyone, as part of our mission to get the NHS off the floor, back off its knees and working for everyone in our country. Thank you.